Nicholas, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
Louisiana and Mississippi took stock Tuesday of the disaster inflicted by powerful Hurricane Ida as receding floodwaters began to reveal the full extent of the damage along the U.S. Gulf Coast, and the death toll rose to 4.
The United Nations warns that weather-related disasters have skyrocketed over the past half-century, causing more damage even as better warning systems have meant fewer deaths.
The Taliban prepared on Wednesday to stage a parade showcasing some of the military hardware they captured during their takeover of Afghanistan after President Joe Biden defended his decision to end the 2-decade war.
And the World Health Organization has said it is monitoring a new coronavirus variant known as Mu, which was first identified in Colombia in January.
Louisiana and Mississippi took stock today of the disaster inflicted by the powerful Hurricane Ida as receding floodwaters began to reveal the full extent of the damage along the U.S. Gulf Coast, and the death toll now rose to 4. Let's listen in.
Department. I spoke this morning about our anti-looting, a plan that has been in place and it has been effective, but also I discussed that we will be ramping up additional capacity, again, from a proactive standpoint. And so that is with the Louisiana National Guard as well. And due to that, we're going to, and I have already signed an executive order that would make a mandate, a citywide curfew for all citizens other than emergency and response personnel as it relates to the response to Hurricane Ida. 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. effective immediately.
Now, New Orleans was under a curfew Tuesday evening, nearly 2 days after Ida slammed into the Louisiana coast as a Category 4 storm, exactly 16 years after the devastating Hurricane Katrina, which killed more than 1,800 people, made landfall. 4 deaths have been confirmed as crews began fanning out in boats and off-road vehicles to search communities cut off by the giant storm. A man was also missing after apparently being killed by an alligator. Ida knocked out power for more than 1 million properties across Louisiana, according to outage tracker poweroutage.us, most of which still out Tuesday evening, leaving residents without air conditioning in late summer. But power provider Energy told New Orleans City Council members Tuesday morning that some electricity could be restored as early as Wednesday, U.S. time. That according to the New Orleans Times-Picayune. Now, the first to see power would likely be hospitals, many of which are dealing with a surge of COVID patients, and sewage and water treatment centers, according to the paper, saying it could still be days before average customers were reconnected. Energy had initially said it could take days to even assess the full extent of the damage. In Mississippi, which has been buffeted by torrential rain, a road collapse left 2 people dead and 10 more injured, including 3 in critical condition, according to the state's highway patrol. The death toll is expected to rise further. Iana Deputy Governor Billy Nungesser warned Tuesday, especially in coastal areas directly hit by Ida, where search and rescue operations are ongoing. Meanwhile, in St. Tammany Parish, police said a 71-year-old man was attacked and apparently killed by an alligator while walking in floodwaters following Hurricane Ida. Ida, now a tropical depression, was traveling northeast, threatening the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. It was expected in the mid-Atlantic on Wednesday, according to the National Hurricane Center.
Now, Hurricane Ida, which slammed into the U.S. Gulf Coast at the weekend, could become the costliest weather disaster on record. That, according to the UN, hailing through that prevention measures had dramatically limited casualties. Take a look.
Quite often, these economic impacts are felt after the event, and that's likely to happen because we have seen major damage to the electric system in Louisiana, and there's even a chance that the economic loss will be higher than with Katrina.
Louisiana and Mississippi are still taking stock of the disaster inflicted by the powerful Category 4 storm that hit exactly 16 years after Hurricane Katrina made landfall and devastated the area. Ida is known to have killed 4 people now, although the death toll is expected to rise, and knocked out power for more than 1 million properties across Louisiana. Until now, Katrina, which killed more than 1,800 people and destroyed large parts of New Orleans, had been considered by far the costliest weather-related disaster. A fresh WMO report that examined mortality and economic losses from weather, climate, and water extremes between 1970 and 2019 found that Katrina had raked in nearly $164 billion in economic losses.
Meanwhile, the United Nations warned that weather-related disasters have skyrocketed over the past half-century, causing more damage, even as better warning systems have meant fewer deaths. A report from the UN's World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, examined mortality and economic losses from weather, climate, and water extremes between 1970 and 2019, and it found that such disasters have increased fivefold during that period. Take a look.
Thanks to our early warning service improvement, we have been able to have a decrease of the casualties at these kind of events. But the bad news is that the economic losses have been growing very rapidly, and this growth is supposed to continue. We are going to see more climatic extremes because of climate change, and this negative trend in climate will continue for the coming decades anyhow. And if we are successful with climate mitigation, we could stop this negative trend around 2060s.
Many countries have been actually suffering because of this multi-hazard reality since the beginning of COVID-19. There have been cyclones in India, Bangladesh, in Pacific Islands. There has been an earthquake in Croatia, and each and every time we know that the authorities for disaster risk management have been really struggling with this challenge of coping with multiple hazards. But this means that this is the reality that we are living in, and we cannot assume that even after COVID, that the multi-hazard world that we live in will change.
In total, there were more than 11,000 disasters attributed to these hazards globally since 1970, causing more than 2 million deaths and some $3.64 trillion in losses. On a positive note, the report found that even as the number of weather and climate-related disasters ballooned over the past half-century, the number of associated deaths declined nearly threefold. WMO said the toll fell from over 50,000 deaths each year in the 1970s to fewer than 20,000 in the 2010s. Taala said dramatic improvements in early warning systems were largely to thank for the drop in deaths.
In other news, Indian health workers in the flood-ravaged Assam state take boats to reach villagers in submerged areas to administer COVID-19 vaccines. Take a look. Now, on Tuesday, India has given a record number of more than 10 million COVID-19 jabs in a single day for the second time in a week. Authorities, as the South Asian giant bolsters its defenses for a predicted new surge. Floodwaters rose Monday across northeastern India, where hundreds of thousands of people are stranded on the roofs of their homes or have fled to higher ground as more torrential rain fell. Incessant downpours for more than a week forced the Brahmaputra and other major rivers to burst their banks across Assam and Bihar states. Up to 2 meters or 6.6 feet of water has submerged many villages. Experts say annual floods which hit the region are getting worse because of climate change. At one dam, authorities released water, fearing the walls would collapse. The floods have also threatened a UNESCO World Heritage listed reserve that is home to the largest concentration of one-horned rhinos. Tens of thousands of people are stuck in villages cut off by the floods, and the state governments said more than 400,000 had been moved to higher ground.
And to the crisis in Afghanistan now, the Taliban prepared to stage a parade showcasing some of the military hardware they captured during the takeover of Afghanistan after President Joe Biden defended his decision to end the two-decade war. President Biden addressed the nation to mark the end of America's longest war, and he again defended the decision to withdraw and claimed that a messy exit was inevitable and praised the sacrifice of service members and their families. Again, let's listen in.
The war in Afghanistan is now over. I'm the fourth president who has faced the issue of whether and when to end this war. When I was running for president, I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. Today, I've honored that commitment. The war in Afghanistan is now over. I'm the fourth president who has faced the issue of whether and when to end this war. When I was running for president, I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. Today, I've honored that commitment. I refuse to continue a war that was no longer in the service of the vital national interest of our people. And most of all, after 800,000 Americans serving in Afghanistan, I've traveled that whole country, brave and honorable service. After 20,744 American servicemen and women injured, and the loss of 2,461 American personnel, including 13 lives lost just this week, I refuse to open another decade of warfare in Afghanistan.
He also addressed the broader global threat from terrorism in places like Syria, Somalia, and Yemen, and from terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Both terrorist groups are active in Afghanistan. Again, let's listen in.
We will maintain the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan and other countries. We just don't need to fight a ground war to do it. We have what's called over-the-horizon capabilities, which means we can strike terrorists and targets without American boots on the ground, or very few if needed. We've shown that capacity just in the last week. We struck ISIS-K remotely, days after they murdered 13 of our service members and dozens of innocent Afghans. And to ISIS-K, we are not done with you yet. As Commander-in-Chief, I firmly believe the best path to guard our safety and our security lies in a tough, unforgiving, targeted, precise strategy that goes after terror where it is today, not where it was 2 decades ago.
All eyes now will turn to how the Taliban handled their first few days with sole authority over the country, with a sharp focus on whether they will allow free departure for those wanting to leave, including some foreigners. The U.S. has said that under 200 of its citizens remain in the country And Britain said the number of UK nationals inside was in the low hundreds. Thousands of Afghans who worked with the US-backed government over the years and fear retribution still want to get out. Talks are ongoing as to who will now run Kabul airport, which German Chancellor Angela Merkel warned was of existential importance as a lifeline for aid. Qatar, meanwhile, urged the Taliban to ensure safe passage for people still desperate to flee. Many Afghans are terrified of a repeat of the Taliban's initial rule from 1996 to 2001, which was infamous for their treatment of women and girls as well as a brutal justice system. The group has repeatedly promised a more tolerant brand of governance compared with their first stint in power.
Meanwhile, Nergis Nehan, a women's rights campaigner and former member of Afghan President Ashraf Ghani's cabinet, gives an interview from Oslo where she fled, deploring the U.S. handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Take a look.
You stayed for 20 years in Afghanistan. Staying 1 more year longer wouldn't have made any difference for them, at least financially and as well as politically. President Joe Biden could have said that by end of by September 2022, I want 0 troops in Afghanistan. But until that time, I want to make sure that we have a political settlement between the government and the Taliban, and we have also evacuated all our employees and local partners, everybody whoever wished to leave Afghanistan. That would have been a much more responsible withdrawal, because basically I had worked in the government and as well as in the civil society, and I have been a very vocal activist and politician. So when you're very vocal, you create enemies in a very traditional society like Afghanistan, left and right. So by mismanaging the whole withdrawal, evacuation, basically the over 2 trillion of investment that was done by the treasury of international community and as well as blood, and mostly blood of Afghans, they just let all of it go, and it's very disappointing that we see nobody holds them accountable. That's my fear number one. So we'll see much more in extremism coming from Afghanistan, from the young generation, and it's going to be all out of poverty and out of feeling of betrayal.
Nehan, who previously served as acting Minister of Mines and Petroleum, said the withdrawal was mismanaged and irresponsible, and with a delayed exit, evacuations could have been handled in an organized manner and enabled a real agreement between the government and the Taliban. The former minister, who explained that she resigned in October of 2019 over frustration that she lacked the political support to enact reforms in the sector, said she fled to Norway after her driver was shot by unknown assailants the day the Taliban took over. As her driver, who survived the attack, was not a high-profile individual, Nehan and her family believed she had been the intended target.
Meanwhile, hours after the final foreign forces flew out of Afghanistan, a group of Taliban leaders walked victorious through the airport, flanked by their elite Badri 313 guards, to inspect what had been left behind. Take a look.
ما با هر تجاوزگر خاطر نشان می سازیم که هر کسی اگر به چشم کج سوی افغانستان سعی بکنه به انجام مواجه میشه که امروز آمریکایی ها مواجه شدند. امارات اسلامی افغانستان با آمریکایی ها از راه دیپلماتیک روابط حسنه میخواه. اگرچه آمریکایی ها اینجا شکست خوردن، ناکام شدن، در بخش نظامی نتانستن به اهداف و امیال خود برسن، ولی امارات اسلامی افغانستان به نمایندگی از ملت خود باز هم میخواه که با تمام دنیا روابط حسنه داشته باشه، روابط قوی دیپلماتیک داشته باشه. در این زمره آمریکا هم آماده میتونه. ما میخواهیم با در آینده با آمریکا هم روابط خود را پس آهسته آهسته حسنه بسازیم.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Sila ang mga kinikilalang bayaning may mahalagang papel para makamit ang kalayaan at pagbabago sa Pilipinas. Pero sa panahong ito, may mga bagong bayaning nakikipaglaban sa sakit na lumaganap sa buong daigdig, ang COVID-19. Ang ating mga frontliner, gaya ng healthcare workers, mga doktor, nurses, medical technologists, at iba pang health professionals, mga pulis, sundalo, security guards, mga tauhan na nangangalaga sa seguridad at mahahalagang pangangailangan ng bawat komunidad. Ang mga bagong bayani, ating pasalamatan. Kilalanin ang kanilang sakripisyo at serbisyo para sa lahat.
Welcome back to the news. The World Health Organization has said it is monitoring a new coronavirus variant known as Mu, which was first identified in Colombia in January. Mu, known scientifically as a B1621, has been classified as a variant of interest, the global health body said in its weekly pandemic bulletin on Tuesday. The WHO said the variant has mutations that indicate a risk of resistance to vaccines and stressed that further studies were needed to better understand it. The bulletin said, quote, the Mu variant has a constellation of mutations that indicate potential properties of immune escape. There is widespread concern over the emergence of new virus mutations as infection rates are ticking up globally again, with the highly transmissible Delta variant taking hold, especially among the unvaccinated and in regions where antivirus measures have been relaxed. All viruses, including SARS-CoV-2 that causes COVID-19, mutate over time, and most mutations have little or no effect on the properties of the virus. But certain mutations can impact the properties of a virus and influence how easily it spreads, the severity of the disease it causes, and its resistance to vaccines, drugs, and other countermeasures. After being detected in Colombia, Mu has since been reported in other South American countries and in Europe. The WHO said its global prevalence has declined to below 0.1% among sequenced cases. In Colombia, however, it is at 39%.
Meanwhile, students are boarding buses at Jerusalem's Damascus Gate to attend their first day of school despite the surge in coronavirus cases. Take a look. Israel on Tuesday recorded its daily coronavirus case tally of nearly 11,000 new infections amid a surge caused by the highly transmissible Delta variant as schools prepare to reopen. The previous high came on January 18 with 10,118 cases. Despite Tuesday's 10,947 confirmed cases, Israel said it's pressing ahead with plans to fully open its school system as it tries to boost vaccination rates. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, a critic of the cycle of lockdowns implemented by his predecessor Benjamin Netanyahu, has maintained that the surge can be controlled through inoculation and protective measures such as masks. His government has encouraged all residents aged 12 and above to get a third jab of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. About 60% of Israel's 9.3 million residents have received 2 shots of the vaccine, including 80% of adults. Israel was in December one of the first countries to launch a national vaccination campaign, which brought daily infections down to a trickle and allowed the lifting in June of nearly all pandemic restrictions. Several measures have since been reimposed, including indoor mask wearing, limits on gatherings, and the need to present proof of vaccination for entry to certain facilities. Bennett has said that the rollout of the booster shot program was showing results, notably by restricting the rise in hospitalizations.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization on Tuesday said the new COVID-19 variant, which was first detected in South Africa, does not appear to be spreading. WHO spokesperson Margaret Harris told a UN briefing that the variant labeled C12 was not currently classified as a variant of concern by the UN Health Agency, as it was monitoring the variant as it evolves. Take a look.
So WHO has been in touch with the researchers in South Africa. They first presented their findings on this particular variant, the one you referred to. It's known as the C.1.2 variant. And the South African researchers first presented their findings to the WHO Virus Evolution Working Group in July 2021. Thanks to these scientific collaborations, we've been able to quickly monitor and assess variants all around the world, including this one, and determine whether or not there's any risk. There have been about 100 sequences of the C.1.2 variant reported globally, and the earliest reports came in May 2021 from South Africa. As of now, it does not appear to be increasing in circulation. So at the moment, it's not designated as a variant of interest or concern, but we're certainly following it, and we will share the information if it's designated as either a variant of interest or concern.
One is called Pfizer.
Earlier, South African scientists said the new variant comes with multiple mutations, but they are yet to establish whether it is more contagious or able to overcome the immunity provided by vaccines or prior infection. According to research, which is yet to be peer-reviewed, the new variant known as C12 was first detected in May and has now spread to most South African provinces and to 7 other countries in Africa, Europe, Asia, and Oceania. The scientists said the C12 contains many mutations associated in other variants with increased transmissibility and reduced sensitivity to neutralizing antibodies, but they occur in a different mix. Genomic sequencing data from South Africa shows that the C12 variant was still nowhere near displacing the dominant Delta variant.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization's representative to the Philippines confirmed there is now a community transmission of the more contagious Delta variant in the country. It's also now the dominant coronavirus variant in the Philippines based on limited whole genome sequencing. Again, let's listen in.
We do know that the Delta variant spreads very fast, is more transmissible, has a shorter incubation period. And so, yes, with this kind of transmission, with these kinds of numbers, we are in community transmission with the Delta variant.
Since its detection in July, the Delta variant cases, these are the orange bars, showed steady increase and has already replaced the Beta, the red-orange bars, and the Alpha, which are the red bars, variants as the most common lineage detected on each sequencing run. This coincides with the start of a steeper rise in the number of cases in July, similar to what we saw previously at the start of our April peak in cases with the spread of the Alpha and the Beta variants. Next slide. Also, we saw a 20% increase in the samples being tested in the recent week versus the first week of August, from an average of just 56,179 tests per day. We are now averaging 67,692 cases per day. Looking at which areas are contributing to the national increase, we have observed that while the increase in cases were from the NCR plus areas last March to April, the current increases were observed in all island groups at almost the same time. But the rate of increase was fastest in the NCR plus and the rest of Luzon areas. Isang taong may sakit na COVID-19 at variant niya ay Delta, siya ay maaaring makapanghawa mula 5 hanggang 8 tao. Kaya pag tinignan natin ngayon ang pagtaas ng kaso, napakabilis because exponential ang kanyang increase. Kasi kung halimbawa, meron ka lang sabihin mo na 5 positive patients doon sa inyong lugar, kapag nakapanghawa siya, you will multiply that already by 5 or 8, no? Up to 8. So ganun kadami ang na-i-infect sa bawat araw na nakakapanghawa-hawaan. So ano ba ang kailangan natin lahat gawin? Aside from preparing our healthcare system, kailangan putulin natin yung transmission. Putulin ang transmission doon sa pinagmumula ng transmission. At ito po ay ang ating mga komunidad. That's why we are recommending that we do granular lockdowns para po doon pa lang sa community, pinuputol na natin ang transmission ng kaso and therefore, maaari po natin mapababa ang mga taong nangangailangan ng ospital at hindi po ma-overwhelm ang ating healthcare system.
Meanwhile, the Philippines has extended anew the travel ban from India and 9 other countries until September 5 to prevent and slow down the spread of COVID-19, that according to Malacanang on Tuesday. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made the statement after health authorities recorded 22,366 fresh cases of COVID-19, the country's highest ever tally in the pandemic on August 30th. Roque said President Duterte approved the recommendation of the Interagency Task Force to extend the current travel restrictions in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia from September 1 to 5, 2021. The extended travel ban also came amid the threat posed by the more infectious Delta COVID-19 variant that was first detected in India. Now, on Tuesday, the total number of COVID-19 infections neared the 2 million mark with 13,827 new infections. The country's case toll rose to 1,989,857, of which 145,662 are active cases. The death toll increased to 33,448 after 118 more people died, while recoveries climbed to 1.8 million mark with 16,759 new survivors.
Search and rescue operations were underway for 5 crew members missing after a U.S. Navy helicopter crashed into the sea off the coast of California, that according to the U.S. Pacific Fleet. 1 crew member had been rescued, but 5 were missing, according to the Navy fleet in a statement. The MH-60's helicopter took off from the USS Abraham Lincoln during routine flight operations about 60 nautical miles off the coast of San Diego at 4:30 p.m. or 23:30 GMT, according to the fleet. Search and rescue operations are ongoing with multiple Coast Guard and Navy air and surface assets, it added.
Thousands of people follow orders to evacuate South Lake Tahoe, a popular tourist spot straddling the California and Nevada border, as the mighty Caldor fire approaches the area. Take a look. Hey, the Caldor fire has already torn through more than 270 square miles or 700 square kilometers, razing hundreds of buildings. On Monday, it was roaring towards South Lake Tahoe, the main resort town in the popular holiday area that straddles the California-Nevada border. Now, on Sunday, as the fire tore through the Twin Bridges area, there were incongruous scenes as flames raged around ski lifts. Snow cannon, usually used to help keep the pistes covered in winter, were turned on to try to keep the area wet. Now, CALD Fire Director Tom Porter said the fire had grown by more than 30 square miles overnight after the air above it cleared. The Caldor fire began on August 14 and quickly spread through the El Dorado National Forest. The blaze is one of scores across the region that are stretching the resources of local firefighters. Now, further north, the huge Dixie fire has ripped through more than 1,100 square miles in the 6 weeks since it erupted.
More than 30 passengers died, including 2 children, and more than 20 were injured when a bus plummeted from a cliff in Peru, in the country's 3rd major transport accident in 4 days. Take a look.
Now, the Coast Guards of the Philippines and the United States have conducted a joint maritime exercise off Subic Bay and Zambales, north of Manila. The U.S. sent its cutter Monroe with unmanned aircraft systems, Can Eagle, while the Philippines deployed several of its vessels to participate in the maritime exercise that include search and rescue and other emergency response operations. To recall, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said President Duterte's decision to recall the abrogation of VFA is based on upholding the country's strategic core interests, the clear definition of Philippine-U.S. alliance as one between sovereign equals, and clarity of U.S. position on its obligations and commitments under Mutual Defense Treaty. The VFA is a 1998 military deal signed by Manila and Washington, which allows American troops to join military drills in the Philippines sans the need to secure a passport and visa. Duterte ordered the VFA's revocation in February 2020. The military pact was supposed to be officially scrapped in August last year, but its termination was suspended for 6 months periods. Now, the latest was in June this year when Duterte decided anew to extend the VFA's validity for 6 more months. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Protect yourself and loved ones. Use Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant that kills 500 strains of bacteria, fungi, and viruses such as coronavirus and other disease-causing microorganisms. Also potent against viruses in pets. It kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes. Dissolve 1 teaspoon in 1 liter of water. Apply on areas for disinfection or use it for misting. Protect Plus Gold.
First, India's economy expanded by a record 20.1% between April and June, according to official data, showed that on Tuesday, boosted by the manufacturing and construction sectors as growth rebounded from last year's strict months-long pandemic lockdown. It was the biggest growth on record since New Delhi started publishing quarterly statistics in 1996 and was broadly expected by analysts after a historic 24.4% contraction in the same period last year, when most factories ground to a halt. Exports grew 39% compared to the same quarter last year, contributing 23.7% of the period's GDP, indicating strong global demand for Indian goods, including petroleum products, gems, and jewelry. Economic activity has been reviving since July and has picked up momentum, according to Kotak Mahindra Bank senior economist Upasana Barwadaj. As the vaccination, he said, pace picks up, we expect momentum to pick up further, although we remain worried on the evolution of the Delta variant cases. Compared to the previous quarter in 2021, however, Asia's third largest economy contracted 16.9%, according to an AFP estimate reflecting the impact of a record-breaking surge in virus infections and deaths in April and May.
In other business news, Google on Tuesday extended the option for its employees to work from home into next year due to the pandemic. Returning to Google campuses will remain voluntary globally through January 10, with local offices given the discretion to decide when to require employees to return to their desks, according to Chief Executive Sundar Pichai. He promised Google workers 30 days notice before they would have to return to their offices and announced they would be able to take off an extra day in October and December as reset days to rest and recharge. Google, Facebook, and other tech giants have delayed plans for workers to return to the campuses that were abandoned early in the pandemic in an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. Now, tech firms have also instituted vaccine and mask requirements to make offices safer as the Delta variant surges in the U.S. and other countries.
In other news, Singapore's Prime Minister was awarded more than $250,000 in damages after winning defamation suits against a news website editor and writer, the latest libel cases brought by the leader. Critics say such lawsuits are among a range of tactics employed by the tightly regulated city-state to silence dissent. Terry Hsu, chief editor of the online Citizen Asia and a writer for the site, were accused of defaming Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong in two separate lawsuits. The writer, Rubashini Shunmaganathan, had penned an article in 2019 about a bitter feud that has rocked the premier's family. Prime Minister Lee will donate the damages to charity, according to the Straits Times newspaper. The row covered by the website was between Lee and his siblings over the legacy of their father, Singapore's late founding leader Lee Kuan Yew. The drama captivated the city-state unused to public feuds among the elite. Hsu, whose site is typically more critical of authorities than the pro-government mainstream media, has launched a crowdfunding campaign to cover the costs of the damages.
Meanwhile, Universal Studios opens its Beijing amusement park to eager guests in a trial opening ahead of its official unveiling on September 20. Take a look.
最期待的就是哈利波特的园区，然后因为我是20多年的骨灰级哈迷，然后就一听说北京这个园区里面有哈利波特，就很早以前就想来了，然后今天是营业第一天嘛，也非常开心可以在今天就来，然后当然是希望北京的环球影城可以越建越大，越建越好，然后里面的服务设施和其他的一些功能可以更齐全。
想带孩子去小黄人乐园呀，然后去看看侏罗纪公园的恐龙，这是孩子比较期待的一部分。
A snaking queue of visitors who were able to snag special corporate invitations to enter the park began waiting outside its entrances early on Wednesday morning. Wednesday's trial run was open only to visitors holding special corporate invitations. The park promises water shows and close encounters with an animatronic dinosaur, while facial recognition cameras allow visitors to open storage lockers, pay for meals, and join express queues for rides without physical tickets. The Beijing attraction, the U.S. media conglomerate's fifth park globally, was first announced in 2014 after receiving approval from Chinese authorities. The city has since opened a dedicated subway station for the park. Visitors on Wednesday were required to declare they were not experiencing any COVID-19 symptoms and had to go through temperature cameras to enter.
And finally, in our news, with a joystick in one hand, a braille device under the other, and a mask over his eyes, blind warriors efficiently disposes of yet another opponent. Sven van de Weij was only 6 when he was struck by cancer. He lost his sight but was determined not to let his disability get in the way of his childhood passion for video games. Take a look.
Hello, my name is Sven van de Wegen. On the internet, I'm also known as Blind Warrior Sven. I'm streaming on Twitch. When I was 6 years old, I was diagnosed by cancer, and yeah, that took my my eyesight away. And from that moment on, yeah, I was completely blind. I play Street Fighter only by audio effect. So the only thing I have is the audio cues that the game is providing to me. And by those audio cues, I'm able to know if I'm on the left, if I'm on the right, what my opponent is doing, how I need to attack my opponent. And I'm very good in the game. Even the best players in the world can lose a match against me. I'm able to manage my Twitch channel through my PC. I have a braille display connected, and a braille display that is a device in which blind people can read the text on the screen. So if somebody writes to me in chat, I can read that with that braille display. Welcome to Sparky. I think I see you also in the chat. Geratian, welcome guys. Good. When the chat is very fast, so there is a lot of people that are typing messages. To keep up with that is very hard, especially because you are also needing your attention for the game, for the things around the stream, that everything goes well. Here, jabs into light DP, or what was it, heavy DP? Yes, when I play versus my viewers, I think 8 out of 10 matches I win. Still not KO there, but this is gonna take him down. I think it's very special that I'm able with all the tools that I need to use the computer to play video games on sound, to manage my streams. I'm happy and grateful that I'm able to do that. But you can cut it out if you want. And I think that is wonderful that you, as a disabled person, can still be part of the society in that way. A coincidence. I mean that my Twitch channel just reached 3,000 followers. I hope that all other streamers with disabilities are getting the same attention one day. But you have to work for it, and you have to be a bit lucky. If I had thought like I am blind, I cannot play video games anymore, and I would have given up there, then I wouldn't have reached what I've reached at the moment. And I think if I can do it, I'm sure that more people can do it. As long as I have fun streaming on Twitch, I will continue. And every day, more and more people found their way to my channel, and I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.
That's amazing.
I know, very inspired. I'm very happy for him. I wish him the best. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, before we go, I'd like to say hello and hope that our friends, brothers and sisters in New Orleans are okay. We were actually waiting for one of them to come in through Zoom, but I guess the signal was too weak. But I hope you guys are safe. As always, as I say, thank you for joining us. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. Be safe, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
This program is supported by